Okay, here's a quick video to show you how to do some basic functions in Excel that might be useful when dealing in a school with marks and how you might interpret a whole year group or a large collection of pupils. So let's first start. I'm going to start this quite easily. I'm going to start to introduce, show you how to rearrange to make it look pretty in effect. So first of all, we just have this series of forms, pupils, unnamed, this midges mark, and an actual mark. And this mark is out of, I'm just going to put it out of 100, let's go out of 110 marks, arbitrarily, but nonetheless, there it is. Okay, what might we want to do first of all? First, we might want to tidy it up a bit. And bearing in mind as well here, this is a Mac version of Excel, which is more or less the same. I mean, you might have to click a few buttons to work out which bits are where, or you might just want to click in a click on Google and that will show you how to do it. But for instance, if I ever have a problem in the Mac version, I just go up there and type in freeze, and then it's going to, maybe it will take you to it, maybe it won't, but there are help things that you can use higher up. Right, okay, first one, let's tidy this up. As I scroll, you notice that the columns move at the top there. So the best thing we can do is something called freeze cells. It is here, you can see it. There are three ways you can do it. You can either do top row, first column, or panes. The way, and obviously the first one is, if I freeze the top row, of course you notice that the top row is frozen. I can still scroll left to right, and I'm missing all those things, so I could go for a column if I wanted, which is quite useful. You see this column's being held. However, the most preferred one I use is the idea of freeze panes, and that means that anything above here and anything to the left of here will be frozen when I select freeze panes. So can you see up and down? If I were just to prove to you that that does work, if I were to go here, everything above, that's 1 to 4, and everything on the left, A and B, would be frozen. Let's freeze the panes again. Okay, wonderful. And if you want to unfreeze the panes, just unfreeze. So I think that's a nice point to put in there. Freeze the panes. Good. What else might I want to do here? Well, first of all, I might want to do a percentage. So let's first of all work out how to do a percentage. It's going to be out of 110. We can see that there. So when I want to make a calculation, I always start with an equal sign in the top bar here. And once I've done equals, then I want to type in my sum. And the percentage, of course, is going to be the value, 69. So don't type in 69, but type in the cell that you want. Click D2. And then I want to divide it by 110. Times it by 100, and that will give me my percentage. A couple of things here first of all. One, you might not want it to so many decimal places. So on the Mac here, I used to view this tab, Home, and there's a quick fire way of doing it, this button that looks here. And if I click on that, I can make it more or fewer decimal places. Similarly, if I right click, I can go for Format Cells, and I can select it in the number and select the number of decimal places I want. Okay, that way. So this is a nice, quick and easy way of doing it. So I like to bring that down. Also as well, what's quite important here is that that mark might have changed. I know it's unlikely to change, but that might not be out of 110. So you might want to control that. So I'm just going to put in a box here, let's say, right at the bottom of my data, total, I'm going to say 110. So I have this random box that I've made 110. So I don't need to start placing it up there. Okay. Now with my formula this time, rather than typing in 110, I want to type in this figure here. So I can click on that box. So now what I'm doing is, if you can see, I'm dividing this one by that one and then multiplying by 100. Return. And that gives me the same number. And the marvelous thing about Excel is that as you drag down, it repeats that function in each of these, with each of these though it hasn't, but it will drag down the equation as you go. Now this is looking div dot whatever, that means something's wrong with it. So when something's wrong with it, then what we do is we click in the bar and it will highlight the cells which it's using in its calculation. So it's done that correctly, but look, that one has started to move down. And as I continue to move, whoops, wait a minute. And as I continue to move down, this one, click on it to check, that's moved down correctly, but this has now jumped 2 places. So what's happening is, this one is jumping down, but I want to keep it fixed. How do I do that? Well, I can merely introduce between the letter and the number a simple $sign. I don't know if you can see that properly there. And when I press return now, what that means is it's fixing the 43 to stay fixed. So now when I start to drag it down and I inspect, this one has moved because there's no $sign. Whereas when I go down to the bottom, that has remained fixed. Perfect. And it just means that actually these percentages can be dictated by not only an input in a mark, but also the determination of what this bottom one is. If that were 100, you'd imagine all of these to change directly into the identical percentages. There you go, directly into the same percentages. We take it 120 just so it's arbitrary. Wonderful. Okay, so we've worked out a percentage. Another point, that doesn't look too neat like that. So what I want to do is centralize them all. If I want to do the entire thing, click on the top of the column. And then I can either select from one of these where I want it to be, or I can right-click, format my cells, and then under the alignment choose whether I want it. I can make it go upright if I want, or I can make it go in the center or the right, and it'll move that way. I like using these buttons. Centralize, done. Good. Now, if I think it's too large, that column, then I can select it and change the width. If I want it to jump to the smallest possible, then if I wait for it to turn to that icon and double click, it will shrink to the smallest possible stage in there. You might say to yourself, well, that's really useful, but I want to shrink it so I can just see the number and the number only. But then the percentage doesn't come out. So you do have this wonderful function called wrapping text, the wrap text, and I can wrap it or I can shrink it to fit. If I shrunk it to fit, it goes into a tiny, tiny thing. If I undo that, I could wrap the text and it's now wrapped in, stayed inside that box. So I might want to increase this box here so I can see it. Or I might not. If that's the case, these are starting to look weird at the bottom. So what I want to do is probably make those centralized. You have another button here that does that. Or we can once again right-click, format cells, alignment. I probably want it in the center, and I'll go in the center. And that's another way to do it. Of course, I could just expand that and do much the same. So there we have it. So it's starting to look a bit prettier now. And there we go. Wonderful. So I've got now a percentage based on this here, and that's actually formulaic. Equals a formula. Work that through. See if you can do the same with the data for yourself. Now, what else might I want to do? I might want to, from there, now work out something a little bit more interesting. And what I could do here is I could work out something called normalizing. I don't know whether... And when I talk about normalizing, what I'm saying is the number of standard deviations above or below the mean a result is. It's a powerful function. What it does is it allows comparisons between different tests. Once again, I want you to all be able to read that. I don't want it to run off, so I click on there and then I wrap the text around. So it allows comparisons between different tests. Let me just expand that a little bit. So that means if one mark was out of 120 and another was out of 60, this will make both comparable equally. Okay, how do I do it? Well, simply what I do is there's an equation here, and I might try and I'm inserting an equation. You don't need to know about this bit, but what I'm going to do is show you how it's done. And I'm going to show you it is going to be, oops. Oh no, we'll leave that bit. Let me just, oh wait, okay then. So I want a fraction which includes I want my value minus the mean, or the average, divided by the standard deviation. Let's call it standard deviation. So that is what I want. Good. Standard deviation. Okay, you can put any type of a box you want in here. Let me just roll that back a bit. Good. So what do I need to do? First, I need to work out the mean of this material and the standard deviation of it. So let's go to the bottom. I've got a total, but now I want to work out a mean and a standard deviation. So once again, the mean, it's a calculation, equals first of all, and then you'd be pleased to hear that there's already a function called average, and you see it gives you a list of functions. So I want the average function, and I want the average of these cells. So I just drag the cells, I click and drag over the cells that I want, hit return, and it instantly makes me an average. Once again, I'm going to shrink that down in terms of decimal places. And my standard deviation, again, equals standard deviation. And I'm going to find out my standard deviation of these. Excellent. Let's shrink that a bit again. Standard deviations don't need to be that specific. Let's go to 1 decimal place. Good, I've got my 2 values here. Right, this is my normalizing. So how do I work it out? Right, I want to equal my value. I want to minus from that the mean, which I know is all the way down here. And then I'm going to put brackets around this because I want to divide it by the standard deviation, which I know is down here as well. Perfect. There we go. And if I shrink this down a little bit more, I've got about 0.9 below the mean of these marks. Okay, what does that mean? Who knows for the time being, but I want it in the middle, if nothing else, so it looks nice. Once I drag, okay, problems here. Why? Remember, click to inspect. That's okay. As I go down, it's jumped twice down. So what have I forgotten? I have forgotten to, in here, add my dollars. Remember, I've got my value I want to move. I don't want that to move. And I don't want the mean. I don't want the mean or the standard deviation to move. So I put $1 and $1. Return. No difference here, but when I drag, there is a difference. There we go. Superb. So I have my mark percentage normalizing. My midges, I'm going to do the same again. So what I'm going to do here is I want to introduce a column into there. So I click on the column, right click, and I go for insert. And everything jumps across. I might just jump across. I might just cut these, move them back a bit, because I'll probably want the same type of data for this column above, for my midges data. So the powerful thing about this is, though that is a complete formula, if I just copy this one and I paste it into there and click inspect, you see the function which was averaging all of those has jumped back and it's averaging all of those, which is marvelous. And similarly here, copy, paste, I've got the same thing. And of course the totals, well, there is no total, so I can just leave that one out. Quite powerful. I'm going to normalize my midges data as well. How do I do that? Take a look, equals, taking the function, actually let me put it in brackets first, minus my value down here, and I know I want it fixed, so I want the dollar in there, close brackets, and I'm going to divide it by my standard deviation, and I know I want that one fixed as well, so there's my dollar. Return, it's done. I think I'll probably want that to 0.1 of decimal place. And I'm going to drag that down. Oh, too far. Drag it down. I think, I don't know whether I explicitly mentioned that, if you get that and you drag it down, it takes the formulas with it. Wonderful. Similarly, if I take a function like that and I drag it down, it takes it down and it increases the number. If I take a group and then drag it down, it will repeat so on. So dragging is a really good function. Okay, I want to try and separate these from those. So just to tidy it up again, I'm going to insert, right click, insert something there, and I want those two are just general. Midges, I've done something with both, so I'm going to merge these two cells, and that pulls them together. Merging is this button here. Take a look, click, merges. And I'm going to call this one midges. So this, therefore, is the mark. And that's the normalizing. And similarly here, let's call this merge that one, end of year exam. I'll make this look a little bit neater. Now I've told you what normalizing is, I'll just put norm there so I don't have to have it looking so ugly, because we need a nice looking spreadsheet. These, again, need to go central and central. And it might be nice just to tidy it up to merge those cells together and to merge those cells together. So now we're starting to look very beautiful. Good. I might take that out. So we now have normalizing, let's call it percentage, and the mark. Good. And if you want to change the column width of more than one, right click, click and drag, right click, column width, and you can actually select column width. 5, far too big. Column width, let's go for 2. That's more like it. So we bring a bit of evenness into that there. Perfect. Okay, now we might want to sort this data, all of this data. At the moment it's sorted by form group and then pupil, but maybe I want to look at who's the highest achieving pupil. What I would do is I'd look at the data I want to sort, so I'd want to select all of that, and then I want to either under the data tab, and we look to sort, or indeed you right click, sort, and you want to have a custom sort. It means you want to define what you want to do. Custom sort. You first of all say, does it have headers? Well, if it has headers, that means that it won't sort this top row, assuming that this is titled. So it doesn't have headers because I know there are headers there, but I'm just using this data. And then first of all, I want to sort by E, which is the highest mark. And then I probably want to go largest to smallest. Who is the cleverest here? Okay. This person, pupil 38, is the cleverest. Now, just be warned here. If I just went like that, right click and sorted, custom sort, let's just say I want it on, let's say I'm looking at it for B. And if I were to click that, these bits change, those bits don't change. So you need to make sure you're incorporating everything, even if what you're trying to sort is in the middle of that range. You need to incorporate everything. I'm going to quickly undo there, otherwise we'll mess up the data. So sorting, highlight all, even if you're sorting it here, right click, sort, custom, and then work out what you want. You can also add layers, so I want to sort by E, then I want to sort by name, and then I want to sort by form. Okay, and it'll mix all those up dependently. Wonderful, right? We've got that. Now, let's do another simple formula and look at what I call progress. So let's just merge, let's call it progress, which is a very simple, remember, make it look pretty, which is a very simple subtraction equals this performance in the test, the most recent, minus, so I've used a minus sign, this one here, return. Let's make it look pretty again. So the power of this normalizing here means that even though this was an arbitrary mark, goodness knows how that's devised, and this is an end of year mark, very different. The normalizing tells you where they were in the distribution of marks, where they were in the distribution of marks. So this person, if this is a rigorous test, and we're using this as a baseline, the end of year test means that this one has gone backwards slightly. They've come back down. They're 0.2 standard deviations below the mean. And if I continue to do that, we have data here. So who's done well? Very few have done well. This one's done disastrously. This one's done well, 1.2 above the standard deviation. So what I want to do is probably say I want to look at who's made progress. So I'd like those cells to automatically colour themselves depending on their value. So let's look at something called conditional formatting. Let me highlight the cells I want. Conditional formatting is here. Conditional formatting. Or if you right click, you can format cells, and then there's some fill based on conditional. It's easier to find this button here. So I conditionally format. Have a look around if it's not Excel. See what happens. Click. Now I've got all of these options of what I want to do. Very simply, I want a highlight rule. And if you want to build more than one, you can manage your rules and look at which ones are in place. So my highlight rule means I want to probably look at if they're greater than, let's say, so format cells that contain a value greater than, let's say, 0.3. In other words, I think I want something, I think actually half a standard deviation is significant. So I want anything greater than 0.5 I want to highlight. And I want to highlight it with something less offensive than green. I want to go green. So red might look negative, so I want to go green. Okay. Suddenly these pop up. Now what would I want to do is I want to probably do the reverse and look at if somebody's done badly. So I want to highlight less than, and let's go less than minus 0. Let's say 49, because then that would include the 5. And I do want it red. Okay? Lots of comp backwards in this one. Great. So therefore, instantly, I've got that range there. So lots have done worse significantly, not many have done better, but this one has done a lot better. Now, if I were to change the marks, let's say I change some of these, let's say that's 90. Oh, spot on, no change at all, equal. Everything else updates itself. That's the power of this system. Everything else updates. So in that has changed mark means all of the distribution has changed as well, and you'll get extra things. So let's put in a couple more. 90s, float them around as you change them. So lots of things change here. Wonderful. So this progress is a really good idea. Now, what I might want to do is I might want to count up how many people have got whatever, or it's nice to have the overall averages here, because I've got an average of the marks. But what happens if I wanted to just take a tutor group or a form group average of the marks? We need to do a count function. Oh, wait, before we do that, let me just step into here, insert there. I want to work out a grade. Okay, so what I want to do is look up this against a known table and therefore assign a grade. So first of all, I need to make my table. So I'm going to call it right down here, grade boundaries, and I want so an A, a B, a C, a D, and an E. And let's say out of my 120, I want as a percent, because it'd be nice to reference here, let's say 80, 70, 60, 50, 20. Let's make it look nice again. Centralize. Probably want that to there. I probably want to merge those cells. And I probably want to put it into a little grid. Okay. Now, this becomes my reference. So, great. So what do I want to do? I want to Vlookup, and it's already there. Vlookup. Bearing in mind, of course, this underneath tells you what you want to do with it. So with a Vlookup, I want to, what value am I looking up? Well, I'm looking up this one. I can't quite click on it because it's underneath, but I know what it is. That one's F3. So let's type in F3. That's what I'm looking up. Comma. And when you press comma, this becomes highlighted. Table array. Here is my table. I want that table there. And then what? And then comma. My index column. So I'm looking for, I want to return the second column of those. And that's it. Okay, so I want my value looking up along here. When it's found the number, it will reference the second one. Return. And it says, oh yeah, too many. That's not a problem. E. Now that's a real problem because 74 does not equal E. The way to get around this is, this counts and it finds the first time. What happens is you go low to high. So if I resort this data, we've done sorting now, and I custom sort based on L, and I go largest to smallest, OK, that's inverted, and you suddenly see that this makes sense. There's another way of doing this as well, and that means that rather than, wait, let me just show you again. If I were to drag this, suddenly it's all going haywire again, because as I'm sure you'll guess, if you click on that, that box is moving down. Two ways to solve it. One, we either click on here and select my dollar and my dollar in the array. Therefore, when I drag, this bit's moving, but that bit's not moving. Perfect. Or indeed, what I could do is I could highlight this table and call it grades. So I call it grades up here. Return. And now what I need to do is I look up my lookup value like I've done before, and then rather than in the array try and put all this dollar and select it, I could just write grades 2. And that will do exactly the same thing. Drag it down, and I've got myself a set of grades. Wonderful. You might want to, just looking at that, think to myself, might want to just put borders around it. Okay, now I've got to the stage where I might want to count up, not just the entirety, but a selected number of people with that. So I want all of set the average for 7F. So here we go. Let's write 7F there. I've got 7E, 7D, 7B, and 7C. Okay. Now, what I might want to look up is their average percent, the number of A's, B's, C's, and D's. That seems reasonable. So let's just get these positioned right. Double click, remember, puts them right. And I might want a little bit more space, so I could highlight all of them and just stretch one of them, and all of them stretch. Good. So where did we get up to with the we were up to looking at the averages. Now we were looking for an average in a certain tutor group and and an average in it rather than an overall average, which we've managed to ascertain here, because those are our averages, mean, average, 71%. But we're looking for a specific tutor group. So what we could do is we could sort all the data into, so let's right click again, sort, custom sort, and let's sort it by form, and then we think we've got it all, and then it's all lined up. So if we sort by A, okay, then what we could do is just work out equals the average, open brackets, of just, go from there down to B finishes there, close brackets, return. That's wonderful. You can do that however many times you need to, and then carry on. However, there is a more powerful way in doing that, and that will be introducing a function called equals average s. Sorry, average if s, open brackets. And what it means is based on any number of criteria, you can average it. So first, what I want to do is I want to average all of this column if this column equals 7b, or 7f, or 7d. So follow the instruction again, average range. So I want to average the mark. No, I said percentage. So let me average the percentage. So I'm going to highlight the entire lot, and then comma, and then it tells me my criteria range. So I want to average all of that if my criteria range, this one here, my form group, comma, and it says here, criteria array, what's the criteria? If that is equal to 7b. So I've put my criteria in quotation marks, return. So there it is, wonderful. It's done it. It's just taken, even though it's looking at the entirety of that and the entirety of that, it's only finding the 7b bits in there and then working out what the average is. If we want to just double check that that is the case after we've made it look pretty, make it look pretty, make it look pretty. 56, what I could do is just work out the average of those, and if I did, it would come out to be 56. So if I wanted to, just I could do equals, old-fashioned way, and it's quite powerful to do this if you ever want to just do a basic calculation. 64 plus 58 plus 56 plus, where am I up to now, B, 46, divided by 1, 2, 3, 4, 56, 56. So it does work, which is excellent. But to make it even more powerful, rather than having to, if I drag that down, then replace this with C, etc., etc., what I want to do is I want that to do it automatically. So rather than writing in 7b here, what I'm going to write in is, click on that cell, there. Perfect. Now if I drag, it's going to hopefully, therefore, look at that. So if I click in there, it's looking at that, but unfortunately these two are starting to move down as well. So of course what I've forgotten is the dollar sign. So what am I trying to fix? I am trying to fix this column and this column. In other words, I put the dollar between the letter and the number, dollar between the letter and the number, dollar between letter and number, dollar between letter and number, because I want everything else to be fixed. Now when I drag it down, hey presto, let's take one right down here. Those have remained fixed, but this has moved down. Perfect. Average if S. Incredibly powerful. So what it's saying here is what's happening, well, it looks like these two, F and D, have the highest overall scores. But that's on average. Now let me just make it look beautiful. Remember, that's important with Excel. So I'll shrink that a little bit. I'm going to centralize those. Make sure they're centralized vertically as well. Right, group. Centralize. Let's get that all into a table. Excellent, and then I just increase these a little bit more. Fraction. Good, now the number of A's. Now we can't average a grade, so we have to count. So equals count if S for the same thing. So we're going to count if such and such equals such and such. So here we go. I want to count my criteria. I want to count down here how many grades are of a certain quantity, comma, and what's my criteria? Well, I want the class, the form, that's important. So I want the form to be equal to. Now what's my form criteria? My form criteria needs to match this one. And also, the next criteria is I want it to equal the letter A. Let's see if that's right. I fear I put that in the wrong order. Yes, it says value. So once again, how do we unpick this? Well, the best way to unpick it is to go back here and say, what's going on? Count if S, this one. So it gives me the formula again. Count if S. First range criteria, then criteria. Second range, then criteria. So what I've done wrong is I've gone range, range, criteria, criteria. So let's start again. So first of all, my first range here, my criteria needs to be the grade, comma. Then my next one, my form, the criteria needs to be this one. Close brackets. Return, I have 0 A's in group F. Careful again, what do we need to do? If I dragged, it would drag all of those functions. So the ones that have the colons implying a range, $, $, $, $. First of all, fine. Now if I drag that, you'd imagine this one would be okay. So if I click on it, yes, that's gone down, but no, this has gone down. So I want to try and lock that one off as well. So now hold on to this one. So when I click here to look at inspect, let's go back to the original. Click here to inspect. I want this one here, which is looking a bit green, which is N4. So if I went $ in there, return, what would I get? Okay, I wouldn't get very many A's, but that makes sense because it's still referencing this one, but it's holding that one. In those two frames, it's holding these into place. Perfect. Now, the real power would be if I pull it across, is it going to reference the right things? In other words, this is moved across brilliantly, but unfortunately this one's moved across, that one's moved across, and even this one's moved across. So, pause, let's go back. In order to stop the columns from moving, not only do you need a $ between the letters, but you need it in front of the letter. So I put in front of there, in front of there, in front of there, and even return. Now I get hold of that and drag it across. Suddenly we have what's gone on here. Sorry, I locked that one off rather than this one off, so I got it the wrong way around. Easy mistake to do, but just click in there and inspect what's going on. So back to here, what I should have done was I should lock this one off. Let's see what we've got. Okay, still a problem because this is still moving, you see. It's still moving to the side. I'm happy with that moving to the side, but this one is moving to the side. I don't want that to move to the side. So if you look back along here, I've got that $ there. That means I've locked row. I should be locking cell. So this $ here that's locking the row, I need it in front of to lock the cell. So let me just drag that down and apply. Here again. Hold on. Okay, now this is all going all over the place because now that's locking off and I don't want it to. So what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to let's just say again, I want to here lock the row. Here I want to lock the column. Okay, so this one, this criteria, I'm looking to lock the column, whereas this criteria I'm looking to lock the cell. So down here what I should be doing is I should be writing, if that is L6, so let's say this one is L6, what I should be aiming to do is lock the column. So what I should want to write is I want to write $L6. That means it's locked in, it won't go that way, but it'll happily go this way, but it won't go that way. In order to lock the row, what I want is I want to, let's imagine here it's O3, I want to write $3. So therefore, it will happily go that way, but it will not go down. So in order to lock the row, that's a lock the column move. So let's just bring that in. Let me italicize that. Let me shrink it down a bit if you can see any smaller. This one I'll italicize, shrink it down a bit. And therefore, let's see what we can do. So, back to the beginning here. Let me just go back and unpick what I've done. First of all, I'm happy with this because it is locking this in because I've got double dollar signs, so that's locked. Whenever we go that way, that was locked. This one locked because I've got double dollar, double dollars, double dollars. However, N4, I want to lock the row, so I want to bolt that in between. Whereas this column, L5, I want to lock the column, so I want it to be in between, in front of, return. Now if I drag down, we will see that this is running down, but that one's not. Wonderful. I get hold of those and I drag them across, and I have a look. Good, so that's locked, but this one's running across the top. So now I'm looking for B's in this column, and yet that's held in there. So let me just have a look. Yes, so that ought to be working wonderfully. It doesn't seem to be though. So I'm referencing, can we see? This has started to expand here. So I'd forgotten to write the extra dollar in front of that A. Bingo. Drag it down, done, drag it across. Magic. There we go. So now these are the numbers we've got. I've got an average of each group. I've got the number A's, B's, C's, and D's in each group. Wonderful. Now, another count function. What happens if I just wanted to count the number of pupils? The total number of pupils involved here equals count A is a good function. Count A means it's going to count whether there's a number in there, or count A's a number. So if I just count up the number of pupils we've got there, close bracket, return, I've got 40, which makes sense. So if I sum the number of A's, sum means I'm just adding together the columns, so I want to sum that, return. See, there's only one, the sum. And if I drag this across, then you see the sum is moving to the right as well. Wonderful. And then I suppose I can just do a sum of all those totals, and it comes out to be 33. Wow. Something's gone wrong there, seriously. Because, oh no, there's some E's. There we go. Because I'm expecting that to be 40. So there are some E's. Let me write E in there. And I'll just take that and drag it across. Actually, I'll take all of it, including the sum, and I'll drag it across. And there's our 7. So now if I, of those, there's my 40. And I can just do a conditional format, if I want, of highlight if it's equal to, and I want to make it yellow, and if it's equal to, let's find a value. My cell somewhere here, I can scroll, it's equal to that. Okay, there it is. So if this for some reason weren't there, let's imagine I was missing one of those, suddenly that goes, and this is no longer yellow. Of course, it should all line up. That's yellow. Wonderful, we'll just get rid of those descriptors. Wonderful, so what have we dealt with? So let's just make it beautiful, let's delete that cell, shunt everything across, should all be fine. So we have looked at how to use the function of counting, count up the number of people there are in the spreadsheet, looking at the average, and looking at the standard deviations, looking at the maximum mark that was there, that's the maximum mark, the average mark and the standard deviation. We then looked at how to work out an average, fair enough, using this total bolted in there. We then assigned a grade looking at Vlookup, looking at this table here. I showed you how to normalize the data. Remember, normalizing means that even though they're arbitrary and abstract, this is like a rank, but how far ahead or below they are, this normalizing is. And therefore my measure of progress is just simply the difference between them. I showed you how to conditionally format to automatically highlight if this is good or bad based on the criteria you want. And then we looked at how to count and average if S's. That means you've got more than one criteria that you want to use. So watch out when you just randomly type somewhere else that it's not just adding cells to it. Excellent, and we froze it off so you can see we can scroll easily. Wonderful. I think those are the most powerful things I use when building spreadsheets, and ones which I think will stand you in really good stead when it comes to analyzing some data. Brilliant. Hope that helps.